All right, welcome back to the podcast, everyone. Today I'm sitting down with a really interesting guest. His name is Josh Leach. And yeah, Josh, do you want to just give a quick introduction for yourself and let people know who you are?
Hiya, I'm Josh. I'm the author and founder of the ADHD Survival Kit, as seen on TikTok, and my background is in animation.
I first saw your TikTok account. That's how I found you just recently. And I'm curious, like, how long have you been posting on there for? And like, what made you kind of start creating content in general?
So I started this summer. I went to this workshop for coaches, and it was to do with like personality typology. And the theme of the workshop was your mess is your message. So all of the things that you've struggled with or that you maybe find embarrassing to talk about could actually be really helpful for somebody else going through the same thing if you were open to talking about it. So in the workshop, I was like, okay, well, I've got all of these strategies that I've developed for myself with ADHD over the years. But I was still actually, a bit embarrassed about them actually because of like how much effort had gone in to make quite simple things happen. Which was actually, I think, was kind of a sign that that's the mess being the message. So then I realized they got me to reconnect with the worst period of my life with ADHD, which was when I was about like 20 and like had sort of a bit of a breakdown. And then I realized, oh wow, like I've come really far since then. And actually, it would be really helpful it would have been super helpful to me if somebody else had come in and shared all of these strategies, because I think I was capable of learning them, but I had to find them sort of through a trial and error period of about 10 years. So yeah, then I felt like a lot of responsibility actually to then get the information out there.
Wow, that's
So
awesome.
yeah.
I really, really like that advice or like that approach to creating content because like I've just speaking from my own experience when I've like tried to show up online in the past and stuff, I've always like, yeah, felt like some kind of external pressure to like show up as someone else in some way, like
Mm.
subconsciously, where it's like, I should like try to hide this part or like conform because no one else out there is kind of talking about that or kind of showing that part of themselves maybe. So I think that's awesome that you chose to kind of start approaching content that way and like leading with your yeah, anything like insecurities or just like your vulnerability, I think is huge. And
Mm.
I'm trying to do that myself. I wanted to ask you when it comes to ADHD, like at what point in your life were you diagnosed with ADHD? Like how did that show up for you in your life? I'm curious because for myself, I was actually diagnosed like a few years ago. And actually I'm curious to ask you about like the labels of ADHD and all that stuff because honestly, I don't even understand or I don't even know what my stance is on it as of recently, like what to think of that label. I don't even know, but I'm curious to hear your thoughts on like that. But also, yeah, when were you diagnosed? If you were, did you just self-diagnose or like, can you tell me a bit more about your ADHD journey and like when that started for you in a way?
Yeah, sure. So I'm self-diagnosed. It was around like 19 or 20 when I had sort of my breakdown. I was at my first year of university. I'd done like a foundation art year and then I moved away. And, I don't think I even really realized at the time, but I was like malnourished in terms of like just eating like oven food and like processed food. I didn't know how to cook very many meals for myself. And so I had like a year of kind of understimulation, not very good food quality, and like was struggling with executive dysfunction and just sort of hit this sort of like breaking point where like I could just feel my brain was sort of on fire. And whilst I was like researching depression, I came across an article which talked about the link between undiagnosed ADHD with depression. And so I didn't really know what ADHD was at that point, actually. So I like clicked on the link and then looked through the list of the symptoms and descriptions and was like, oh wow, this like describes like problems that I've had across my whole life. Like, and there were loads of sort of like gaps of like knowledge about like everyday life that I just didn't like wasn't aware of. Like I didn't understand how people could like look at a car and know what that car was. I was probably one of the last people to learn the days of the week and like calendar year or whatever in year group because my brain would just switch off if it wasn't interesting to me. Like I used to have like a version of, like the DVD screensaver where it like bounces up and down the
Yeah.
sides of the screen. I would like do that with like a invisible bouncy ball on the classroom, like around me. And the thing is, like
Whoa.
I never got in trouble for it because like nobody knew I was like not hyperactive. Like I was more ADD, like attention deficit disorder without the hyperactivity. So it just kind of like then I was able to like look at my life through like a completely different lens, which was great actually, and that like alleviated the worst of the depression because it gave me a new frame or thing to be curious about throughout the process. Whereas before I'd like I don't know, mess some basic task up, and then that would be evidence that in my mind that I was stupid or still depressed and wasn't getting better. But then it became like this interesting instance of like executive dysfunction. I'm like, oh wow, like I'm seeing this for the first time. Whereas before it's like stuff I didn't really care about to do. But once I'd started trying to be less clumsy and found that I actually couldn't, then that was like, oh my God.
Mm, that's interesting.
Yeah. So hang on. I was gonna
Yeah.
carry on. Sorry. I
Oh no,
interrupted.
you go, you go.
So I went to the doctor about it, and he said this was about 10 years ago now, and he said to me there's no support for adults with ADHD, so I'm not really sure what to recommend. Like you could maybe go private. And at that point it was like a £200 like hefty assessment fee to maybe tell me something that I already kind of knew. And so the advice which I saw online was like it was kind of like either get medicated or follow your passions and interests. And that's sort of the route that I went, basically.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's so cool. I want to ask you more about that. That made me, what you were just saying there, kind of for me, reminded me of like identity and how it relates to these kind of maybe neurologically different or neurodivergent traits people might have. Like again, speaking from experience myself, like, yeah, like somewhere, I think earlier on in my journey, before I understood how my brain worked and what was going on there, I was more prone to kind of identifying with those things and what I was seeing as like a negative trait or just like some kind of lack of some quality or something, and like identifying with that and making it like almost entering like a shame spiral of some kind where it's like, oh, like this happened, and then oh yeah, like you said, this means this may be about me, or like it gets like kind of tied into your identity. And like I kind of like the idea of like kind of what you're saying there, from what I understand, is like seeing that thing happen, but then like, yeah, like finding a solution or just learning it's like, oh, this is like just how my brain might work. Or it's like, it's not some big, it doesn't have to be that deep. It doesn't have to be a big thing. It's just like a sign of my brain working differently, or I just need to figure out different kind of coping strategies and like ways to optimize my life. And like a big one, like you're saying, is like pursuing what you enjoy or what you like and what you love more than not doing that. And like, I think that's huge. And I think that's a conversation that's so needed in the world, online, anywhere, because yeah, I'm sure you're aware, yeah, like our society, it seems, especially in the West, maybe it's so easy to just kind of enter the medicational route and just be prescribed something. And that's like without making any lifestyle changes or like changing up. What are you actually doing? Like, are you excited to wake up today? Do you have like a hobby or a passion that's actually lighting you up? Because I think like as much as medication, I've tried a couple in the past. Funnily enough, I've never been consistent enough with it to probably even notice benefits. But yeah, like for me, like when I've taken it, like I've always had it in the back of my mind, like, oh, like, maybe it's more of a lifestyle optimization thing. Maybe it's a find your passion thing. Maybe there's more pieces to the puzzle than just, oh, it's this, receptor in your brain. Here, take a pill and like, let's call it a day. Just do that. Like, and I've seen people and I've heard of people who take the medication and then they still, yeah, it doesn't do everything for them, right? It doesn't do everything for you. You still need to implement other strategies. And I'm sure you could talk about some of your favorites that you've kind of put into your ADHD survival kit. I'm curious to ask you about that. Like, how long did it take you to assemble all these strategies and make an actual ADHD kit for people?
I can answer that, but I'm curious about what your experience was with like trying medication and
Sure.
like the different ones and like what that experience was like. And also, is it because in the UK we've got really long waiting lists for like ADHD diagnosis. Like I think I heard the other day, like the average wait is like 7 years for some people, and they've got like a backlog of like over 500,000 people, which they're like trying to cancel at the moment to try and clear some
Wow.
cases. Whereas I'm curious what it's like in Canada, because I know in the US it's very easy to get a prescription or a diagnosis.
Yeah, no, that's crazy. I did have to go privately, like out of pocket for the testing, which kind of sucks. It's so weird. I found it kind of funny how this like ADHD, the whole thing, a large part of it is the executive dysfunction and like struggling to implement things and like get logistics going. And I find they make it so complicated to get a diagnosis here. You have to pay so much. And then even when you pay, there's all these things. You have to go in person. I had to drive to Toronto like an hour from here to see them in person for some reason, even though it was during COVID and all this stuff. Like they make it so difficult,
Mm.
either financially or just logistically. Like, yeah, even to what happened was, I don't know if this is answering your question, but like when I last was trying medication, I guess I took it for a short period. I took 5 ants at one point for a short period. And then I ran out or something, or I went so long without trying it. And then I wanted some again to try it. And it had been so long, like I needed to book another appointment that was going to be like 3 months out, 6 months out or something, just to see the person I paid already to get the assessment from. Like it's super difficult, I would say. But some people have luck. I didn't have this luck. Some people have luck just going to their family doctor and explaining their symptoms. And if you're lucky and you want to try a medication, your family doctor might prescribe you that. But usually they prefer you to see a specialist, I guess. And my family doctor didn't really help me out in that front. He just said like, oh yeah, like adults, there's, yeah, adult ADHD. Like, I don't know. Not that I don't know about it. He didn't say that, but it's like kind of was just gaslighting, I guess you could say, my symptoms and just saying, oh, like try just taking some caffeine pills and call it a day. Like, and I tried that. I was like, oh, just like take caffeine pills. Like that's what I was told by my family doctor. So not to out him or something, but like, yeah, I would say the kind of the diagnostic process here is very complex and very slow and potentially costly if you don't have a family doctor who's willing to just like listen to you and hear you out and hey, yeah, okay, if you really feel this way, maybe try this. Like, so it
Mm.
is complicated for sure.
It really does seem like it's kind of a bit of a postcode lottery for people.
Yeah.
And you know, the people who need it the most will not get seen
Yeah.
the way
It's
that
so true.
that is. Like, so
Yeah.
I mean, I'm like, there's a small amount of comfort knowing that it's like the same, similarly bad elsewhere.
You're not alone. You're not alone
Yeah.
over there in the UK.
Um, so it took me like about a month to write the kit. Where I mean, it kind of didn't. It arrived in like jumbled packages. So I would like wake up in the morning and I'd be hit with sort of just like five different thoughts. And then like my job was just to kind of write them down or document them somewhere on a piece of paper. And then it really seemed like it was just five. Like after I did get that, like I couldn't remember anything. So I just went through the process of like that for a month until eventually I tried to sort of like move them all around to see like, okay, what goes where, because this doesn't make sense. But like eventually like some themes like emerged. I was very careful to put sort of like mindset stuff last because I feel like actually all of the mindset advice it's everywhere. It's really easy to come across and you find something and then it like works for a week and then it never works ever again. So I thought putting like the practical strategies that I found that have helped first would be the best way, and then like mindset is just something fun to try later down the line. Because I tried to solve ADHD through like emotional ways so many times. I thought being organized was something people were just sort of like in the mood to be. And I was like, when am I going to be the sort of person who's always in the mood to be organized? And then it turns out that it's not really like that. It's more being organized is more about getting information and compressing it into like little decisions that you
Mm,
can easily choose between.
Like systems in a sense, like creating a system.
Yes.
Dude, that's such a huge unlock for me that I've only been recently basically, yeah, understanding. What's that quote about? Like something about you, or no, you fall to the level of your systems or something
Yes. Yeah.
like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. You don't rise to your goals, you fall to the level of your systems.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that really hits diff. Like for ADHD folk, I find like, because yeah, it's so easy to find, like you're saying, like mindset tips, and like I had that idea too. That it's like, oh yeah, am I am I supposed to feel like I'm in the mood to do all this stuff? Like, am I supposed to
Hmm.
wait for that momentum, that inner kind, or that inner sense of like, oh, I'm ready to seize the day? But like you're saying, there's a way to distill everything down into actual practical, like steps to take and like abide by. Dude, that's huge.
Hmm.
Um, yeah.
So this is a good point to actually mention that we're both the same Myers-Briggs type, INFP. And so like INFPs, they have sort of feelings and like nuance of feelings in abundance, but figuring out like systems and like practical how to is something that they repress in favor of like exploring their feelings.
Mm,
So one thing that happens sometimes is they come up with very elaborate systems, which then they just chuck away because they didn't feel like it that day and they wanted to explore like another whim.
I feel
Um,
seen. I feel seen. Yeah, for sure. Like I definitely relate to that. I don't know how much you know about Myers-Briggs stuff. I know little, but I know I'm an INFP, but I know there's something like, is it the last function? There's some like function that we developed later that's supposed to do with the practical kind of implementation, right? If I'm not mistaken.
yes. So for INFPs, that's extroverted thinking. So Personality Hacker, the podcast, the term that they nickname it is effectiveness. So it's all about making the decision that's most effective or expedient to get the job done. Whereas INFPs tend to lead with introverted feeling, which they've nicknamed authenticity, which is all about sifting through your internal reference points and like decisions and data and your identity to make like an identity based decision. And because that's the way that like INFPs like to interpret the world, I think that's kind of what really actually held me back from getting organized sooner, because I was viewing it as like an identity thing rather than finding out like processes to like follow, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that makes sense for sure. But I noticed when you were talking about how you started coming up with the ADHD Survival Kit, you mentioned those 5 things that you put in there kind of came out of like the morning, like waking up, right? I'm
Mm-hmm.
curious to ask you about just, yeah, like ideas and creative visions or ideas. Can you speak to that a bit? Like, do you notice people talk about like shower thoughts or, oh, I had a great idea out on my walk? I experience that when I go for long walks. I'll have an idea, or yeah, maybe I'm falling asleep and the idea, some cool idea hits my psyche. And then sometimes I'm too tired or I don't even have my phone nearby. So it's like, I always tell myself, okay, I'm just going to remember this idea for the morning. And then I always forget. So can you speak a bit more to that? Like, do you notice other examples of that in your life where it's either you're waking up and you have the idea, or like you're doing something else and you're in flow somehow and then, oh, and an idea comes. Can you speak to that a little bit if you have any experience with that?
Yeah.
Because I'm so intrigued, because my mistake I think I've made in the past is like, I've had this idea in the past. I think maybe just the conditioning or the way people talk online and stuff like that. It's like, oh yeah, just sit down and grind and like sit at your desk and grind it out and it'll just come up. But sometimes it's sure, like sometimes you have to blunt force it maybe to get like creative juices out and like do that. But for me, I notice a lot of the time, for me, ideas come up when I'm not focusing on the task at hand and my subconscious is maybe doing some of the calculating and the ideating when I'm not consciously there. You know what I mean?
So I think it's really important to have some method of thought capture. So whether that's just having like a little like tiny notebook that you like carry with you, or like sticky notes, just because like the ideas are like coming to you at like random points of the day, either or like in the shower, or like when you first wake up, or if you're listening to music. And like before I had like a process for capturing them, I'd always just think like, oh, that's interesting, I should do something with that, trusting that I was going to remember. And then you forget, you like don't remember. And then it's like, oh no, I had a great idea, but I don't remember what it was. And then it never has a chance to recombine later down the line with a completely different idea that occurred to you in a completely different setting. So I really like sticking stuff on the wall. So I've got like this sort of idea pile over here where it's just somewhere for the things to come and land. And yeah, I think like a lot of my creative process happens in quite a methodical way in terms of like absorbing information from places, creating sort of little uh like a squirrel sort of burying nuts, but all in like preferably in one place so that when you go back to them, you can see all the connections between them.
What is your favorite part of the wall? Like what helps you the most? Where, if I, like, for example, me, I don't have anything on my wall right now, but it's been something in the back of my head where it's like, okay, I know sticky notes are valuable. Having
Mm.
stuff in my environment that I could look at would probably be helpful, but I don't necessarily know where to begin. What is maybe what's someone's first step if they have ADHD or have self-identified as having ADHD? What might be the first helpful thing to put on their wall to make their lives a bit easier?
Sure. So making time visual. So some people use like Google Calendar and stuff. I, for some reason, it doesn't really just doesn't work for me because it's constrained by my phone. Whereas just having it like just printing out different days of the week, and then I'll like it's not foolproof if I don't print off enough days of the week. Sometimes I forget to write something down, and then like there's an issue later on. But I find it also helpful to kind of draw what I did on each day as well, just to just because it's kind of nice. It's nice having like a mini art practice, and also it helps with time blindness. Just have it like if you can store it visually, like you sort of remember writing the thing down, but like I never remember scheduling anything into like a digital calendar, like ever. That's just not something that happens. And you can use like different colors. My friend recommended using like stickers to try and be consistent with the habits, which I've been using for like posting. I've not been very consistent the last couple of weeks, but it's like it's silly, but it kind of works. Like just giving yourself like a sticker reward. And yeah, so I'd say it's the idea pile, and then just having like a calendar, like a visual calendar to use, and then as part of the survival kit.
You can see it.
Yeah. So this is really good for. This is how like my life doesn't fall apart every 2 weeks anymore. Is because I've got all of the stuff that I know that I need to do to maintain my energy. And like if I feel like anything is just slightly off, I'll just come and I'll look at it and be like, oh yeah, I need to do that chore. And now I don't have to store it in my head. I can just have it on the wall. And using a picture as well is super helpful because the brain can process like visual information, something like an estimated 66,000 times faster than text. So it's something I can just glance at from across the room, and then the information is available to me, rather than before I did have it as a list, but I'd have to go and sort of just like read through it and check line by line. Whereas this, it's just a quick glance and you're done.
Wow, that's huge. Yeah, I would definitely say like visuals help me. So I definitely I need to grab your kit and, put some things on my wall to make my life easier. I love that kind of artistic implementation you have there of drawing, like what you do in the day. Like that's really cool. And it kind of makes me lead into what I want to ask next about like creativity in general or art in general. How do you find art being helpful or valuable or meaningful to you as a person who identifies as having ADHD? And do you recommend people like that have a creative practice of some kind, whether it's drawing, whether it's writing, music, anything? Like how important is a creative artistic practice for people like us?
Oh my gosh, I think it's really important. It feels like that's one of the most important things in life is to have a creative practice or output. But I was reading this book the other day, which kind of like changed my thoughts on it a little bit, where there's a character, they're in like a boarding school, and the kids have to create art for these like fairs, but the art gets taken away by like an adult if the art is particularly good. And there's this one character who's being sort of bullied or segregated because he didn't really try his best with like making art. And there's a point where one of the teachers says to him, if you are really trying your best and you're not very good at art, that's okay. And like just so long as you try your best, that's totally fine. You don't like it's not it's not the be all end all of everything. And it's really emotionally healing for that character. Like he stops having like arguments with as many people, and it kind of just changed the way that I think about it, because I think creativity is super important, but I know that a lot of people actually don't have a creative practice, and a lot of people have blocks to creativity. I think the most common one that I come across is people saying like, oh, but I can't draw. Like I think that's one of the most common creative wounds that people pick up in childhood. And then the knock-on effect of that is that they don't try other things because they start to form identity around like, but I can't draw. And then it stops them from other creative pursuits. I don't know if that's true. That's just how the world appears to me.
That would make sense. Like, to me, like drawing is a very accessible outlet when you're a kid. It's common for people to have like, or at least when I was a child, people used to have crayons on their table, like, and there would be paper and you'd just doodle. And I remember doing that as a kid, but I think you're onto something there with like the fact that, it might be one of the earlier wounds people have. And then they start to identify with that and be like, oh, I'm not creative in general, or I'm not good at art in general. And that rings true for me. And I've definitely noticed that for sure. That's interesting.
No, tell me more.
Oh, I was just going to say one thing about what you had just said that came through to me is like kind of the topic of like perfectionism, maybe. And maybe that ties into INFP being that personality type. Maybe it ties into the ADHD, or it's all one thing, who knows? But personally, as I've begun to kind of prioritize some kind of creative practice, whether it's the writing, whether it's showing up online in some way, recording content or music or something, what stopped me for a long time in so many ways is like the idea of perfection, or when I'm good at this, then I'll do that. Or, when I have this thing, then it'll help me do that. But I find like, even if it's something like something I purchase there's been so many times in the past where it's like, oh, I buy something and it's like, once that dopamine hit like is triggered or something, now I'm going to be good at the thing, or I'm going to finally pursue that thing. But oftentimes it's just a dopamine hit from purchasing something or getting the new course. And then it's like easy to not implement it or actually use the tool or whatever. But anyways, back to perfectionism. Yeah, that idea, like, can you speak to that? Have you noticed that in your life at all in terms of like a blockage maybe that you had to overcome? Because I noticed for me, that was a huge one of just like, even with a podcast, when I started this, this is probably the 5th or 6th episode now, if I'm not mistaken. But before I started, there was like, I felt like some kind of interest or calling, I would say, to try it out just as something to do and experiment with. But in the back of my mind, I was like, oh, like, who am I? I'm not so-and-so. Like, so-and-so has been doing this for 1,000 episodes and they have this thing. And like, what am I? Who am I? Like, I'm not perfect at podcasting. Therefore, just like never going to do it. Like, I realized like consciously that began to not make sense to me, but it still for the longest time was like something that was seemingly in the way of me doing that, or music or something. It's like this idea of like perfection and the ideal. Maybe it is the idealistic side of being an INFP. But yeah, can you share more on that? Like, have you noticed it in your life, perfection being a problem at any point?
Yes, and it reminds me of what you were saying really early on, which I didn't get a chance to respond to, about sort of like authenticity and like creating. Like, creating online content is a really good way to start letting go a little bit of what you want your identity to be before you present it to the world, because you just start getting into motion, and you have to make the thing, and then you show up, and then you start building a body of work over time where it's a kind of just improvising your way through it, and then it's like captured as like a piece of content. And like I feel like perfectionism has definitely like held me back from like producing, but also producing is a type of antidote to perfectionism as well. So if you keep going, you will eventually lose the hubris of whatever was like holding you back from making the thing. And then if you get far enough along, you'll look back and then you'll form an idea of like, oh, this is great. I'm the person who made all these things. And then that hubris starts to like form again. And then that creates like a creative block. And then that has to be pushed through with like more creation again. Like, it's like my mind wants to take credit for something that's not really me. It's more like it's channeling through me.
Mm,
Um,
that's interesting. And the word you just used, channeling, I want to explore further. As that word relates to creativity or showing up and doing content, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on that, like allowing things to kind of flow through you, maybe. It kind of maybe it ties in probably to the subconscious ideas that might arise at bedtime or in the morning or on a walk or something. But yeah, can you speak more to like that when it comes to channeling and letting things flow through you as opposed to getting too hung up in what's working for other people, what so and so's tweeting, oh, this follow this framework, follow this template, copy and paste it, and bam, you got viral content, bam, you got this business idea. Like there's a lot of copy pasting going on. And
mm,
I think like I think for myself, templates help and like learning, if you're learning a new skill, maybe it's like copywriting. I'm a freelancer and I do marketing related stuff. So for me, it was like copywriting and like, yeah, like you want to learn templates and things that actually work. And there's principles to follow generally. But um, to have an edge, I think I'm discovering to have an edge or have some kind of unique essence of your own, you kind of have to eventually just like trust your own kind of creative vision or your own being, if that makes sense, like and channel whatever comes through you. And this is something I'm learning more about myself and I'm trying to practice because it intrigues me. And I think it's where, especially in this age of AI, where it's so easy to just have like an AI generate an idea
mm,
or like a way to go do something like, but it's like ChatGPT and these things. If you just have like if you just open a new chat with ChatGPT, it's not going to give you something necessarily tailored to you. Although, yeah, like it stores things in the chats, but it can only like guess. It's not actually you, and it's
mm.
never gonna. I don't think, or maybe at this time, it's not truly able to like do what you might do, like
Yeah.
in the realm of subconscious, in the realm of just channeling and letting things flow. You know what I mean? That
Hmm.
was a long-winded statement or question, but I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on any of that.
Um, so I think it's reminding me of this quote, which I love by Carl Jung, where he says something along the lines of people don't have ideas, ideas have people. And an idea in the mind of an artist becomes a force of nature. So um, it's kind of like the ideas are out there and they're looking for somebody to help them express. And like if it comes along and it sort of like taps you and you say yes, then you create together. Or if you say like no, or you kind of like hesitate or you leave it for too long, it's like, okay, I'm gonna go talk to somebody else.
Mm.
And then like the idea like leaves and it goes off. There's a fantastic TED talk which talks about this idea. It's the lady who wrote Eat, Pray, Love. Well, maybe like write it in like the comment section. I can't
Yeah.
remember what it's called now. But it's this concept of creativity being like an external force that you can't really take credit for, but that's good because if it's bad, then it's not really your fault either. So yeah, I think there's that element of channeling. And also once you start working with that idea, gosh, there's like strange synchronicities that happen. There's another TikToker who I'm friends with who we've both separately been having very similar thoughts to each other in terms of like the direction of where we want to go with like developing our respective ADHD resources. And so in sort of like meeting and like talking to each other, it's like, oh wow, I thought of that too. You thought of that too. It's the same entity. It's like it's speaking to like both of us as a way to try and like realize itself into the world. And there's another story to do with like Michael Jackson having a similar thought process where like a song came to him and he was like stressed and anxious about like getting the song written in the studio. He was like, if I don't do it, Prince is going to do it. Like, it's like, I have to, like,
Yeah.
there's a race.
Well, that's cool. Yeah. Whoa. There's so many ways to go from there, I think.
Yeah, there's somebody out there who has also just started a podcast at the same time, and you're competing with yourself and that person, not
Yeah.
not any of the other people that you're already looking up to.
Yeah, true. True. That's so interesting. Yeah, that I find it fascinating that yeah, there's however it works, there's certain yeah, ideas just floating in the ether and right place, right time, or right person. Like if you're just tapped in and articulating these things, yeah, you might do it or someone else, like just whoever's first to maybe pick up the camera and say the idea. Like
Mhm.
that's really fascinating to me. On that note of like content creation and ADHD folk, if there's someone out there who wants to start showing up online or sharing their work, writing, showing their art or whatever, like what's one piece of advice you'd give to someone who might be experiencing some kind of internal blockages, or maybe we could pick a specific one or something, but any just general tip or principle or like, yeah, like approach for someone to start showing up and like, I don't know what I'm asking exactly, but
Mhm.
yeah, like how can they get that momentum going? Well, how should they frame it? And how can they maybe put it not so on a pedestal, like it's some perfection thing or it means something, identifying with them, you know?
Ooh, okay. So I had a friend who's like a retired art professor, and she introduced me to this concept of the cycle of creativity. I made a poster about it where it's got 5 phases. The first is, and you can do them in any order. So it's experimenting, making, looking, deliberating, and then incubation at like any of the phases. And the benefit of like using that model to think about creativity is it means that at different parts of the cycle, the things that you want to do might be more suited to like another phase. So, for example, it's really important during like the deliberating or sort of planning phase, or even the making phase, to be making like critical creative decisions or like judgments like, oh, this is the vibe that we're going for, or this is the thing which we've set out to make. Whereas if you're in the experimenting phase and you're making critical creative observations, that's going to like block your creative flow, because that's the time when you should be just following a whim or like trying something out. Or even when you're in the looking phase, you want to be able to like just take the thing in without making too many comments about like the quality. It's like you need to be like in an absorbing mode.
Mm.
So the thing that you were talking about is like someone who is having like a blockage to their creativity. So that might be somebody who's staying in deliberating for too long. So like each of the phases, if you like stay in them or they start to become difficult, that might be a sign that it's time to like move on. So if you're like making the same thing a lot, you might need to step back and look at the bigger picture and go into looking. Or if you're doing all the same experiments, you might need to like go back and like decide what is it that I'm actually trying to make. Yeah. If it's like if you're struggling to even get started, you're probably in deliberating for just too long. And people have favorite places to start with the creative process, and they disagree with each other about like
Mm.
where to go because it's just their favorites. Like, let's plan it out first, or like, no, let's just get started and jump in. Yeah, like decide more about your aim that you want to focus on.
There's definitely been times where I might not be acknowledging that there's different parts of the creative process. And like, say it's writing, I've at times I'm writing something. There's a difference. Like there's other times where, yeah, like I'm sitting down, I'm just going to do some stream of consciousness, artist's way or journaling or something, stream of consciousness. What's it called? The pages, morning pages kind of thing.
Yeah. Artist's way. Yeah.
Yeah, that thing. But then other times it's like I'm writing and then I write one sentence and then it's like, oh, let me edit that. Like I'm starting to nitpick and try to, it's not so much like I'm in a clear creative part of like what you're saying. Like I'm kind of
Mhm.
trying to doing multiple at once and it leads to just like, yeah, you're constantly like context switching and trying to wear different hats. And it's like, it's probably easier to just choose one of those stages, really embrace that for that session, sit down and do that, and
Mhm.
then come back later, tackle it in a different way. That makes so much sense.
Have you how much have you tried out with the artist way? Like I've started and stopped it like maybe like 3 times. I've never got all the way through.
No, yeah, I've never even finished the book or, but the main thing when I started reading the book, the first thing I just started with was the morning pages. That's like the main and probably only thing I've really tried and implemented at any given point. But yeah, there's been periods where if I do it for like a week straight, or I'm trying to remember my longest stretch of like consistently doing like 3 pages, but I definitely have benefited from that at times when I have committed to it. just getting all my ideas out there. And I notice when I start over and I haven't done stream of consciousness writing in a bit, there's a lot of more noise, and it feels like I just need to get things out, whether it's relating to this topic or that, or, oh, I have this to do, but, oh, this is a cool idea. Maybe I want to write about, like, things like that. There's definitely something valuable to that process of just getting all of it out and not judging it. When I started that practice at the very beginning, there was definitely like an inner voice, and I was just like aware of like, oh, like, why am I saying that? Like, I don't know, like, that's kind of weird to write down, or, oh, that's a pointless idea. But I realized that's like not even the point. Like, the point isn't to judge what you're writing or to get in your head about, oh, this next sentence is going to be epic, or like, the whole point of that practice, from what I understand, is just to get the cogs moving again, especially if you're someone who's not been connected to that creative part of yourself for quite some time. Actually, I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on this too, Josh. Like, the difference between writing when it comes to, like, on a computer, like typing. Do you notice a difference between typing versus writing things on paper? Is there a difference that you perceive, like what comes out and how it feels?
Yeah, I like to go analog first, then digital, because I find with my notes, I can't actually read my own handwriting very, like, as easily as if it were to just be printed out. So anything important, I'll like type back up, and then it also like helps me keep the place a little bit tidier as well. Otherwise, like, the wall can end up just completely blasted, and then it's like, I'm not even, it just becomes background noise. Yeah, I find with typing, it's very tempting to sort of like backspace and then go back and edit as you're doing it, and then you can get stuck on the same sentence. Whereas I can't do that on the page. I have to like write the new line. So it's nice to go between, I'd say, and mix it up with like voice notes as well.
Yeah, voice notes. I really like voice notes. Even when I use something like ChatGPT or like an AI tool for whatever, oftentimes I find myself now just like doing a whole rant or a whole voice memo and just saying whatever and like just having that as my prompt, as opposed to sitting down and thinking precisely about each little line and, oh, like, whatever. Sometimes I just feel like it's easier for me, and maybe better for me, to just literally stream of consciousness on this question, topic, idea, and then see what it spits back.
Mm.
And okay.
I do too. Like,
Oh yeah.
I find like AI is like I really like having it as a collaborator. When I was writing the kit, it was really helpful just to be able to talk about the process or like the concepts and have it at least say like, yes, I agree. And then like, oh, okay, it does make sense. And then like just kind of go from there. Like, it can be like a fantastic cheerleader to like have on board or like part of the process.
For sure. I definitely find that as well. Two other little ADHD tangents I wanted to bring up was having multiple passions or a lot of different interests. Maybe you can speak to that. Like, yeah, ADHD and that kind of way of thinking, that way of being, maybe being a strength. It's kind of like, the silver lining, like, not to say it's all sunshine and rainbows, but I know there's a lot of struggles for sure, especially if you don't know how to manage it. But yeah, I kind of wanted to ask you about like what you might deem some of the advantages of being this way, or strengths, how we can kind of see those qualities as strengths in certain areas, but also the other tangent of maybe having multiple interests, multiple passions. Speaking from experience again myself, there's so many rabbit holes like I'll go down, or I'm interested in this and this and that. And when it comes to content online or building something, business or some creator project, there's so much talk about niching down and choose your lane. But for me, like, I've always struggled to put myself in that box. And I like kind of integrating just all my interests, all my passions, if there's a way to do that, trying to speak to it all and incorporate it all. That's my vision, what feels true to me, as opposed to just like, this is me in like one line and this is what I do. For some reason, that's like almost claustrophobic to me because it feels limiting. So I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on that. Maybe if you have multiple interests or passions, how have you kind of integrated those or come to terms with that and maybe embrace that? Or how might you view ADHD as a strength or something that can be an advantage for people if they learn to work with it?
I find it quite difficult to monetize my creativity because there's all these different like areas, which then makes it quite difficult to market, because I can do a bit of each, and I want to be open to all the possibilities. But then it's quite difficult for other people to then like look and think, oh, how could I use Josh for all of these different things? Whereas they're usually coming with just like one problem, and they're like, can you help me with this problem? And then when I'm like, oh, look at all these things I can do, it's like it's difficult to market that. I mean, I wouldn't like give up my like multi passions. Like, I mean, I do like, animation, I do drawing, do music, film, like interested in like personality psychology, and then, this like ADHD Survival Kit, I don't know. I mean, I think, if you're multi-passionate, you're supposed to get interested in things and then drop them, but like keep whatever it was that you took from them, and then later on combine them into something fresh and original that like wouldn't have happened if you hadn't gone exploring and doing all these other things. The animation and graphics will eventually. So I think about creative practice as kind of like a more to do with like what journey your attention has gone on, because like when you weave it through things, you come back, and then it's like it's benefited from all these things that it's gone through before. So like your creative practice is really whatever it is that you're interested in at the time, rather than a specific discipline that's too rigid a way to like look at your creativity. So like I don't know all the different things that you do, but I'd imagine that they find ways to like feed in to copywriting, because like you'll be picking up like different metaphors or like thinking about how things work, and then borrowing those principles and then applying them somewhere else. And then, yeah, like, I don't know, everything bounces and clashes off each other.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. It makes me think actually, I heard, like the term wandering. I've seen a clip of Jeff Bezos of Amazon in an interview mention like how he wanders and the importance of wandering and going down rabbit holes and just like, yeah, doing stuff aside from just sitting at the desk and like grinding something out. I remember hearing him talk about that in a clip of just saying, yeah, how important wandering is. And I find that kind of cool, like, because, yeah, I mean, at first I would think that someone like that, CEO of Amazon, he's probably just at his desk and he's optimized and he's just focused on the work. But even someone like him he's saying like, yeah, there's so much value in wandering and combining different interests, like actually, yeah, just living life a bit. And then, like you're saying, kind of integrating it all, maybe synthesizing things and taking that principle from that and applying it to this. Like, I think that also contributes to one having and developing their own kind of edge in whatever field they're in, because they're not just abiding by whatever the typical advice is, the typical resources. They're actually living life, and they're going to formulate unique perspectives and skills, like integrations of everything.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. So just if you had one thing to say on like just the idea of, or maybe that is the strength, maybe that is a strength of someone who might have multiple interests or is ADHD. There's a lot of overlap with these terms, I guess,
Yeah.
what we're
Yeah.
talking about.
ADHD, multi-potentialites, multi-hyphenates,
Right.
jack of all trades.
Maybe, yeah. So maybe that is like, can be a strength, like just what we're talking about right now. And actually on the note of, because you do like ADHD coaching, right? Too, right? Like working with people.
Yes. Like, so I've done some stuff in person. I think it works best in person. I've done some stuff online, but I think there's something about like in person, you can spend a bit longer and it's more fun. I think. Yeah. I'm trying to think about how much time it would take to sort of put people through like an ADHD Survival Kit course. And I think it's like maybe like a 3-day intensive. You could really set people up with enough systems to just help them build like a safety net, so that the next time they're at the bottom of downward spiral, it's really easy to climb their way back out.
Cool. Wow. Yeah, that's a pretty short amount of time. That's pretty awesome. Is there a piece of advice that you find yourself giving more often than a bunch of the others?
I'm not sure I've seen enough people to see like a pattern yet. It's more like I'll tend to see people getting stuck in maintenance organizing loops. Okay, so should I explain this model for the benefit for like the podcast or?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. So my aha moment that I had with ADHD. I think this is going to be reversed. Yeah, it's going to be reversed, but it's fine because we can use the triangle. I went to the Edinburgh Fringe Festival in Scotland with the intention of going seeing a bunch of different like shows and gigs. And I was there for a month, but about like halfway through, I'd barely seen any shows. And then a show I really wanted to see sold out. And then I was like, okay, like, well, this isn't going to work. So like I went to my like to-do list and I was like, oh, there's got to be some way of figuring this out because I just procrastinated. I was overwhelmed and I didn't make it to go see the show. And then when I was looking through my to-do list, I realized, oh, okay, there's like stuff that I have to do. There's stuff that I want to do. And then there's the work that I have to do in order to go do the stuff that I want to do, like the organization or the executive functioning. So like just buying the tickets. And that's when I came up with this model called the MO model. So it's like maintenance for the stuff that you have to do to look after your energy, organizing, and then experiences. So once I'd like figured that out, it suddenly became a lot easier to start working out how to plan my day because it's like, okay, what's the maintenance I have to do to look after myself? What are the experiences I want to have? And then working through those things sort of sequentially was really helpful. I can't remember what the question was.
I can barely remember
Yeah.
either.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So then I realized that there were like different loops that people could like fall into. So you could spend a lot of time doing like maintenance organizing, where you spend all of your extra time thinking about how to get better at conserving your energy. So that kind of looks like hoovering for fun, or like, no, sorry, I can't go out. I need to like do the dishes or something like that. Or I need to meditate or exercise. Then there's the like organizing experiences loop, which is like to do with unsustainable partying. So you go out, you have an experience, and then you're like, oh, we'll go to this thing next until eventually, if you don't do any maintenance, you crash back out into like the fog, which is all the downward spirals of like ADHD where you're like not regulated. So that's where I see most people are at, is like in the fog because they just can't get enough momentum in order to like look after themselves. Or they spend all of their extra time fighting themselves to try and get organized and then missing out on experiences. You know, people who are struggling with like the OE loop, I tend not to really see them because they're not even like thinking about how to get better at organizing. And they usually kind of enjoy the process of going from thing to thing to thing. And that's where they get their self-esteem from, is like, oh, but I go and do these things. It doesn't matter if my room is like messy or something like that.
Interesting. Wow. I definitely need to implement that cycle and be aware of those pitfalls because it rings true to me. On the note of ADHD, just generally, I also want to ask you about synesthesia. I can't even pronounce it properly, but I saw on your site, your animations, by the way, are really, really freaking sick. I love those pieces you put together, those videos. But also on your site, you mentioned synesthesia. But I just wanted to ask you too, just in general, with what you're doing online, ADHD, and just the topics, like what do you enjoy? What is your favorite part about your work, or what excites you about what it is you currently do? And yeah, that kind of thing.
Like the thing which excites me the most is it's getting like the responses or the feedback. So it's funny, like as a like creator, comments are worth so much more than likes or views. Like when a comment comes through, it just like goes ding 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 in my brain in a way that just likes no longer do. Like when I was first starting out, it was like, oh my God, a like has come in, a like has come in. But like now I just feel nothing. I wait for the comments. um, and it's nice people reaching out. So I think it's the social interaction or like coaching element of it that I enjoy the most. Content creation with marketing, it's like you have to say a lot of the same things, which is actually kind of a slog, but it's worth it for when other opportunities appear. And and the internet just feels like it's like a sea. It's just moving all the time. You have to. You don't end up in like a solid place where you're like visible with TikTok. You have to like keep posting in order for like people to find you, which I don't want to do forever, but it's part of the process that I need to just go along with for now.
Yeah. I've seen them talk, maybe you have as well, about how I guess maybe it started with TikTok, but I see a lot of sentiment online right now about how the algorithms are moving from something based to interest based. I can't even remember the word, but or attention based to interest based, I think. Like, so before it was just, yeah, like likes, people went by views and likes and, oh, I got this many views and whatever. But now the algorithms are so good that if you just talk about your niche topic, it the algorithms know to show it to certain people. Like, it's getting
Mm.
better at doing that. So we're almost entering a new kind of stage of social media where, yeah, it's not about the views and the likes and stuff. It's actually more, I feel like that's in alignment with what you're saying about comments, and engaged commenters and people actually, yeah, because it takes like energy to leave a comment, or it takes for someone to actually comment, they have to be emotionally engaged, I would say, either some kind of polarity where it's like shitting on you and hating on it and like,
Mm.
hey, this sucks, this triggered me, or, oh, I feel seen, like this is super valuable. Like, there's both sides of the coins that are going to show up, but that makes a lot of sense. And it's in alignment with what I've been hearing about how we're kind of entering interest based social media algorithms, which is kind of exciting, I guess, in a way. If you have a really niche topic you like, or you have some kind of very obscure business that serves a very specific kind of person, if you just create content about it and put yourself out there and say the same thing 1,000 different ways,
Yeah.
like eventually someone's going to appreciate that or feel seen or reach out to you to work with you, or just, yeah, feel really connected with your content and what you're doing. So that makes a lot of sense.
How do you feel about the idea of niching down in general?
Yeah, like, yeah, niching down, it's like part of me in my brain, it's like hard for me to do, or it feels weird, but maybe part of it is like not totally writing it off. But just like a bit of my story is I've been freelance marketing, freelance copywriting for a few years now. And yeah, like I've always struggled to like choose a specific offer, a certain person to serve. Like, it ends up being like people or businesses I'm genuinely like interested in, or kind of whether it's like health or a specific kind of health thing, or creativity or music. Like, funnily enough, I work with the first guest I had on my podcast, Jeremy. He's the founder of I Am Sound, which is like this really cool 3D printed instrument brand. And he
Hmm.
was my first podcast guest. And now we work together and I help him out. And it's kind of just naturally arose, I guess, like by me wanting to reach out and like communicate and maybe befriend or just like chat with people I genuinely am interested in. And this isn't maybe answering your question whatsoever, but yeah, niching down has been hard for me when it comes to freelancing, or yeah, just like create the idea of creating content. It's like, oh, what kind of content am I creating? Who do I want to serve? Or what? Yeah, like even like platform specific niches or something, like choose one platform to stick to and just do that. Like, a lot of people just say that, but then I see another side of the coin where it's like, oh, like, no, you can, if you want, just diversify a little bit. Maybe you post on X, maybe you record video on TikTok, like do whatever feels true to you in the moment, I guess. But yeah, to answer your question, niching down has always been a struggle for me. Yeah, not that I'm like totally against it by any means. And I think, like you mentioned earlier, it's so much easier if you just choose like that one thing, like I help so and so accomplish this,
Well,
like,
it's easy. It's easier for visibility, but it's not easier on the soul.
yeah, true. Important distinction. Yeah, it's easy visibility for sure. Yeah, that's the thing. The soul part, it's like it tears away at me a little bit when as soon as I like put like the one line, this defines what I'm doing, like, and don't
Hmm.
reach out for me to me for anything else. Like, I don't know, it's hard. So it's a work in progress, but I'm trusting that, like, on a meta note, just by me showing up and doing a podcast format, me doing random posts about my interest or sharing things, like eventually, I'm still very early in this whole journey, but I'm trusting that eventually over time, just by creating, like you mentioned earlier, having a tangible body of work in front of me online, it's going to become more clear those things. And maybe it can just be a kind of natural progression as opposed to, yeah, me sitting down and defining it. Because I think that is like, I feel like that's a very in the head mind way to go about it too. Like, it's one thing to sit down and try to formulate in your head and just like define it yourself. And it's another thing to just like put yourself out there and let you throw crap at the wall, see what sticks. And then eventually you'll look back and be like, maybe it is a bit more clearer now that what it is I'm meant to do or show up as or create on here, if that makes any sense at all.
Yes. No. That. Yeah. 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 And it's inspiring me as well, actually, because I'm like, this. It seems like a really like just a fun project to do. because you can, you just go follow your interests. Like, your work's interesting. Can I talk to you about it? You're offering like to platform people in exchange. It's just like it's a great. It just seems like a really fun, creative project
For
to
sure.
like embark on.
Funny. You mentioned synchronicities earlier. I mentioned this on a earlier podcast episode, but it might be relevant just for fun on this one in terms of like synchronicities and stuff as it relates to this podcast. So there's this guy named Jack Moses. I don't know if you're familiar with him. He's on X a lot, but he's a cool dude. He is in the spirituality kind of online creator, digital nomad kind of world. But this was like months ago, I think like late last year, that I booked a little short call with him. He was offering some calls just to chat. And he has a podcast. And I was at a point where I was like about to do a podcast, or I was considering it, and I just wanted to pick his brain about it. So we're on this call, and then Jack, he's in a coffee shop somewhere in the States. And as we're talking about this podcast, I was like, hey, like, I know you have a podcast. Like, what's your experience been? Like, what have you enjoyed about it? Anything I should consider or know? Like, he's in a coffee shop. And as we're talking about that, he was talking about like podcasting. And he gets like interrupted by some girl in the coffee shop. And I see like this girl talking to him, and she's like, is he starting a podcast or something? And he's like, yeah. Anyways, this random girl who's listening in on our conversation, like our Zoom call podcast thing, or sorry, our Zoom call before I ever had him on the podcast, but she comes on this call that was a coaching kind of call with me and Jack. And she just puts in his like earpods or AirPods and starts telling me about why I should start a podcast and like how it's transformed her life and like how it's been so fun. She's made all these connections. It's been a really fun creative outlet. I was like, oh, I got to take that as a sign. We were both like on the call, like, okay, that's crazy. Cause like, it's one thing, it's just crazy for someone to even go out of their way. Like part of me is like, would I even go to my way to like do that and like step in on someone else's call and just say, hey, random guy, you should definitely start a podcast. Like I took that as a sign as like, okay, maybe I'm meant to like try it and experiment with it.
Yeah.
And yeah, man, if it's something if you're interested or you feel the call, I would definitely encourage it because yeah, so far, again, I'm only a few episodes in, but it's definitely been fun and I've been making great connections and yeah, it's just super fun. Like also as it relates to business and maybe putting yourself out there and networking, it's a really great way to just connect with people genuinely. And if things arise, if there's a way you can serve someone, that's great. Maybe you follow up after if they've mentioned a problem or something, but I think it's a great way to just connect with people in an age, especially where AI is becoming more prevalent. And there's so many people already before the AI, there were so many people just outreaching spam messages, copy paste templates. And like, I think we need more human energy. We're craving more connection. So it's a really low barrier way to connect with people and just, yeah, make friendships, make business relationships, who knows, or just, I try to not attach to any particular outcome, but it's been really great so far. I wanted to ask you though, so on the note of synesthesia, if I'm pronouncing it correctly, I always struggle with that word. Can you speak to your experience with that? I'm really curious. And for those who might not be aware, what is that? What is synesthesia?
Sure. Okay. I'll tell just pinning. I'll tell a story about synesthesia and synchronicity in a bit.
Cool.
So synesthesia is basically where it's like there's you get stimulation of one sense and then it stimulates another part of the brain. It like bleeds over into another sense. So it can happen because there's like not synaptic pruning between different parts of the brain. So the neurons basically overfire and then that extra activity gets stored as other information. So for me, when I listen to music, it inherently has visual qualities to it. And also temperature, which I didn't realize until I touched it in my mind's eye. I was like, whoa. Yeah, it has like, it's got like temperature information as well, but I just never thought to like check. But yeah, so I think it's more common than people think. I think it's less like a hallucination. It's more like, feels like knowledge almost. One thing I get people to do is to sort of touch the back of their teeth with their tongue and just like observe the moment that you know what the back of your teeth look like because you can feel them. And it's like, it's in that area of reality that stuff is like happening. Like, it's not like visuals that like get overlaid. It's like, it's happening in the mind's eye or mind space.
That's fascinating because yeah, like there's definitely, that misconception of someone who does not currently have that ability or feel like it. That's always, yeah, things in the mind's eye is really intriguing for me. It's like I've always wondered, it's like, oh yeah, so your eyes are closed, are you seeing like all these colors, or like are you seeing this, like, so it's, you're saying it's more, it's that kind of relationship similar to feeling the back of your teeth with your tongue, like it exists in that kind of sensory realm, whatever that means, you know?
Yeah, I think so. There's some people who claim that it like does interrupt their like vision, and like that could be true. It's not for me. I think for people who have synesthesia, who it really impacts or impairs their ability to function normally, my suspicion is that they're also very autistic, and that it's like it's sensorily overwhelming. But yeah, I don't. I feel like it. People can develop it from doing psychedelics because it can sort of like reset the brain into like a period of like making neuroplastic connections again. Um, I tend to find that my synesthesia waxes and wanes in intensity, like depending on how much attention I'm paying it in that period of life. So if I get into a phase of like paying attention to it, it starts to become more vivid from day to day.
Hmm.
So like if you go back to the touching your tongue against the back of your teeth, if you like press harder, does the image become like clearer or more vivid?
For me right now,
Yeah.
I guess you could say that, maybe, perhaps. It's hard to say.
Yeah. Or like how does it impact your like mind's eye?
Like I perceive, like I perceive the shape, I would say, maybe more solidly if I'm like really pressing on there.
Hmm.
Like I'm more aware of the structure of it, or that sense. Like it's felt in my mouth, but yeah, I'm not
Yeah.
sure. I maybe feel it more or see it more.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
Uh Also like I'm trying to think of like another example. I don't know, like if I was to just sort of make like a noise like like what information does that what visual does that give?
Like it's thin, like it's a thin
Hmm.
sound, or yeah, it's like thin. I guess is like a physical depiction, maybe.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And is it like in terms of like color wise, is it like darker or lighter?
I think lighter, like a brighter white might have came up for me.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I see the same thing. It's like a white line, and then
Interesting.
like there's like a slight variation in the pitch, like and it's almost like it blurs out from where it's like sharp in the middle, and like
Oh,
in the
cool.
variation, like it gets more blurry, or and like which direction does it travel?
Uh, when pictured it, was like a horizontal. It was like a cross, like in front of my awareness, I would say.
Mhm.
Um,
I'm having the same experience. That's how I visualize it as well.
really
Yeah.
interesting.
And there's some aspects of synesthesia that are universal. So deeper sounds are generally darker, higher pitch sounds are generally lighter, which like indicates that there might be something about the structure of the human brain that actually like creates that experience.
Hmm.
So yeah, I made like a 30-minute audio experience that people could listen along to and try to develop visuals. So which I can like send, or if I can find it. I think it might be on my other laptop.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'd like to try that or see that because it's interesting to me.
I just remembered the synchronicity story. So one thing I've done before is I've like paired up with artists where I'll create like visuals in response to what they're doing, like music artists in real time. And I saw this guy on the train who he had like blue nail polish and like fuzzy pink hair and like a big fuzzy pink coat. I was like, oh, yeah, I think he had a bass on him. He did have a bass on him. I was like, I'll go like ask him if he wants to collaborate. And he's like, oh yeah, I collaborate with my other friend Poppy, and we do the same thing. We've got a gig in like 2 weeks. Do you want to come? So like I got to go and like see another synesthetic artist like doing the
Whoa.
thing. Like, what are the chances?
Wow.
Oh my gosh, yeah, that was like that. Whoa, the universe is magic moment.
Yeah, seriously. That's so cool. it makes me think about just like, yeah, what happens when you just like put yourself out there and like you don't actually know what might happen, but like I think chances are if you decide to like put yourself out there and whatever that means to you, things start to just transpire. I don't know if it's an energy thing or if it's just practically, oh, like you are here, you're just technically more likely to have opportunities pop up. That's so cool. I love hearing like stories of synchronicities like that because it's just so exciting. Like sometimes like, yeah, I don't know. I don't know how you feel in those moments, but it's like really cool. It's like a cool sense of like, oh, I don't know what's happening here, but that's like really cool. And it's just sometimes it's too not too coincidental. It's too weird to even feel like it's a coincidence or something. Like it's super
Mm,
aligned and just I don't know. That's a fascinating thing.
meant to be.
With synesthesia, how does it like that perception that you have that yeah, sense of awareness, I guess, whatever we'd call it, how does it shape your art or what you do? I'm curious to hear like just like yeah, like hearing music and like being able to see it or perceive it in a different way or yeah, anything else, even just sounds and like does it shape your art in a certain way? Do you have a different process or I'd be curious to hear how it might influence what you do and how you create in general.
So, like a couple of different ways. I realized when I was doing the shows with people, with other artists, that I was kind of bootstrapping two different shows together at the same time, and that it created this kind of creative tension where basically it's too much to ask your audience to be looking inwardly and outwardly at the same time. So, me going and showing, like, oh, this is my experience of synesthesia. You have your own experience of synesthesia too. That's too much for the viewer to like handle between whether they should be focusing out here on the screen or like going internally. So, I realized what I needed to do was either drop the synesthesia concept and just focus on making something visually beautiful with music, or keep the synesthesia concept but drop the visuals and the animation and just go straight into the music with like guided audio to get people to go into their own experience. So, um, in terms of like making art, it's like it's nice to do animations of how the music looks, but I find with animation, because it takes quite a while, it's really difficult for me to finish my own passion projects with animation. Like when I finish stuff, it's usually because somebody else is involved in the project and then I'm
Mm.
accountable to them. Whereas like smaller scale projects are like much easier for me to finish. Animation is a bit too long. I think it doesn't really, I don't know if the synesthesia really affects the way that I go about making music. Probably not. I think I prefer to start with like lyrics and then go from there. But those are just a couple of ways that it's like popped up as a theme that I'll play around with.
Interesting. Interesting. Something that comes up for me is I have a childhood friend who I try to understand what his synesthetic experience is, but he's a musician and composes music, and he's described to me that when he's like composing pieces, he'll have some kind of felt synesthetic sense of like what it looks like or structurally. There seems to be like a structural element for him. And there's times where he'll like change one note on the piece of paper and suddenly like the structure that is meant to be, he feels is like there and it rings true. Like sometimes it could just be like a single note for him and it's like suddenly, oh, now everything's complete or it's like a completed thing. So I'm so intrigued by synesthesia and like the different, how you mentioned there's like universal components and then also people might have like unique sub niches of it or sub genres of it. It's so fascinating.
It's very fussy. It's like a very like particular. It's like, oh, it looks specifically this way, or like, oh, this tiny note has like completely changed
Yeah,
everything.
that's so interesting. So interesting. Maybe one thing we want to chat about. I know you had mentioned or you had some notes on being an INFP. If you want to bring up anything about INFP-ness, funny. Before we kind of, I know we're over an hour. I don't know how much time you have or whatever, but I don't want to hold you too long, but maybe we could chat about that. Like, I know you had mentioned like maybe being a dude as an INFP. I think it's less common, right? Is it typically that there's more INFP women or is that true or no?
I don't know if there's like more INFP women, but there's less feeler men in general. Like the thinking and feeling dichotomy is split 2/3 thinker men and 2/3 feeler women. So, I mean, I feel like that was a cool paradigm shift to like realize, oh, like a lot of my strengths are actually more feminine qualities. And that kind of gave me permission to lean into them a bit more. Like, like active listening, like INFPs are usually really good at that. I've got a friend who, he's called Dr. Dario Nardi, and he's done these experiments with EEG brain scans where they'll like measure people's like brain activity whilst they're doing different things. And INFPs are able to like listen generally to people for the longest. Like the whole brain goes in sync whilst it's like absorbing information, and then it makes like a final judgment, and then it's like done.
Wow. That's fascinating.
Yeah. So it like makes them really good for like therapists and coaches as well, because they can just absorb all the information.
There's so much emphasis out there on like communication and what you say and how you speak and that, but there's a whole other side of it, like what you're saying, listening and like cultivating that as a skill is almost equally important, depending on where you look or what the situation is. Yeah, like being able to listen. So that's really interesting. That makes sense that INFPs are good listeners.
I'm curious what your experience was like finding out about being INFP and like what your response to it was.
It definitely made sense. I'm trying to remember, like I've been aware of the Myers-Briggs personality test in that perspective for at least a few years now, maybe 4 years. But when I originally did it, definitely rang true to me, like the mediator INFP assessment. Yeah, just the ideas kind of guy, the big picture, the dreaminess, the daydreaming, sometimes struggling with the practical until maybe later in life when that function develops or whatever. Definitely all rang true to me and made a lot of sense. And yeah, I've done the test like multiple times since. I always do it, and I do it on different days. I'm feeling differently, and I always get INFP. And funnily enough, this is random, but my girlfriend, she, at the beginning of her relationship, I think she was an ENFJ, but now like over 3 years into a relationship, she is an INFP. She copied my personality. So I rubbed off on her or something.
Yeah.
And I find that hilarious. I was like, you copied me. What the heck? But yeah, to answer your question, yeah, I was chill with it. Like I identify with it, which I don't know, doesn't matter if you do or don't, but it definitely rang true to me, all the qualities that supposedly make up that personality type, and the interest in just being more of a creative kind of person. But at times maybe you can overthink a lot and get too kind of zoomed out and too like not practical. The kind of path I'm walking right now is trying to like distill it down and like kind of be the bridge between worlds. Like, how can I embrace that dreaminess and those ideas and the creativity, but also support it with the practical, the systems, and like the actual groundedness of doing the thing? Because I think we have a lot of great ideas, INFPs out there. Like there's a lot of visionary people out there and a lot of great ideas, but it's more likely that they'll struggle. And I've definitely struggled with like the practical side of things. So that's actually kind of like an intersection of things I am interested in. And I'm trying to cultivate more information on that and just like my own lived experience, try to formulate ideas or frameworks and like ways to make life easier for someone who has a lot of the ideas and they're a creative person, but they still want to actually utilize them. And you mentioned when it comes to like musical collaborators or just collaborators in general, maybe you can speak to it too, about like how the INFP is someone, I think, from what I understand, who can benefit from having team members or eventually having some kind of collaborators to help bring things together and to actually execute upon. I always say like eventually like part of my dream, I guess, in a sense, is like the best role for me is like where I'm just like saying a bunch of ideas, getting things out and like angles, different things. Okay, have we tried this? Blah, 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 blah. And then someone else like does a lot of the heavy lifting of the doing. That's like my dream role. If I could just sit and like say things like, oh, that'd be so good eventually. But yeah, it definitely rang true to me. Like, how about for you? Can you speak to that? Like what was it like discovering you were an INFP?
So like absolutely with you on the ideas. Like that's the dream. It's just to be able to like say have we like X, Y, like just idea burst. and then somebody takes care of the practical. Unfortunately, like the practical people don't want to hear all the different like ideas. So they're like, oh, but what's the like one thing? And then they're like, oh, but I thought we agreed. And then you're like, yeah, but we could try this thing. And they're like, oh.
Yeah. That's so funny.
um, my experience of finding out about INFP was I had an English teacher who was INTJ, and he didn't want to teach us about a particular scene in Shakespeare that day. He was like, "Oh, I hate this scene. This is really boring. Let's learn about MBTI instead." So that's how I got introduced to it. I went home, did one of the tests, and then it like came up. At the time, I remember reading it as like INFP. Like, okay, INFP. What is that? And then when I was reading the description, it talked about INFPs sort of living in like a world of like good and evil, being really interested in like fantasy, and like concerned with like what makes something right in one context, like wrong in another, and what's the underlying moral or principle to be found there. And at the time, I was like reading a lot of C.S. Lewis. I was quite religious at the time. So I was like, oh, whoa, like I feel more understood by this description than the people in my life that know me. So it was fascinating sort of reading through. And then I borrowed a book off somebody, learnt about each of the different types, and then like would go around school like asking people to like fill in this little 4-question assessment to like just get people to sort of figure out what their dichotomies would be. And then from there, that kind of helped me build like a knowledge base of like these sort of types they've all agreed with this vote thing, and then these people have agreed with this thing, and then what's going on there. But at the time, it was super freeing, and because it gave me a way of looking at the world which wasn't just morally based. So I thought, I thought everybody should care about like morals and stuff. And when like people didn't, I found that very demoralizing. But then when I learned about type, I was like, okay, that's me as an INFP processing the world this way. Like other people are processing it differently. And then how can I learn about that? And then that was interesting.
For sure. Yeah, the morality is definitely a big chunk of that. I definitely relate to that for sure.
Did you, like, before finding out about INFP, did you think of yourself as like a very emotional person?
Not necessarily. Like I think I came to appreciate it once I like was looking into it and I actually began to realize, oh yeah, like I seem to be an emotional person or maybe empathetic or some like emotionally tuned in some way that is significant. Yeah, probably reading it. I don't know. Like I think it was like at least 4 or 5 years ago, probably where I stumbled across Myers Briggs, and I don't think I maybe knew to that specific degree yet. Like I just maybe had that felt sense. Like I don't know. I think like when it comes to like other like male relationships and like friendships and things, like there's definitely been certain areas of life where this is kind of like a funny one, but when it comes to like sports, organized sports, that's like a very bro-y kind of thing usually. And few of my like closest like childhood friends who I still hang out with a lot of the time, these guys are like obsessed with like certain sports like basketball, football. And I'm like the guy in the group chat that just like has like no commentary whatsoever. And it's kind of a meme that I like, yeah, who's playing? Like they're on what team? Like, I don't know. I'm just gonna like be in my feels. No, it's not like that, but like, you know what I mean? Like, so there's been patterns probably throughout my life where I've maybe been drawn more to creative things and like thinking about ideas and just, yeah, expression and stuff. Whereas maybe that's not the case usually for a lot of dudes, but everyone has both kind of energies. You both have the feminine and masculine, and there's a time for creativity and there's time for more just linear logistics. Okay, what are we doing here? But yeah, to answer that question, I don't think I knew. I don't think I recognized or gave myself credit for that part of it until I started studying Myers-Briggs a bit and just reading about the type. It just started to click, and I was like, oh yeah, wait, everyone doesn't feel that way, or not everyone feels emotions in that area, or it definitely became clear over time once I delve into that work. What about you? You knew that or before it or?
Well, it allowed me to give myself a bit of slack because I thought I was like a very immoral person. But then learning about it, it was like, oh no, I'm thinking about morals all the time. That's probably why I'm like beating myself over the head with like that standard. So yeah, so it was definitely like it was a bit of a relief. And the thing is, like C.S. Lewis is also an INFP.
Cool.
So I think it's interesting, like his ideas so smoothly, like kind of implanted themselves in my brain because it's almost like whatever he was cultivating, it's it's like suited to like INFP soil, and so like it grows really easily. And I think that's kind of how ideas and memes spread across culture, is that like people interpret it a certain way, and then they're like, oh yeah, this makes sense with my psyche, and then you try to tell the idea to somebody else, doesn't work with their psyche, and then it like the argument either gets the idea either gets deconstructed, or it like evolves in response to like, oh, these people don't get it, blah blah blah, or like yeah, I don't know,
No, that,
kind of like the thing about like people don't have ideas, ideas have people, and they
yeah,
spread.
ties back into that. Funny you bring up C.S. Lewis because I've not been reading fiction as much as I did, but I want to cultivate more fiction in my life and reading fiction. But the one book I did buy recently was the like C.S. Lewis like full Narnia series in like one book, and it's under my Brad. My name's Brad. It's under my bed, and yeah, I started it. I want to continue going through it, but that's funny you bring it up because I think I knew he was an INFP, but Narnia is really cool. I remember the movies, and I've always wanted to sit down and like actually read that series, especially knowing now, yeah, that he is an INFP. That's really really cool.
Oh yeah, magician's nephew.
Oh, actually, and it starts with that technically, right? Interesting. Okay. Yeah, I got to get through that. I want to get through that. Anyways, Josh, it's been awesome chatting with you. Based on everything we chatted about, is there anything you want to just let my audience know? Like I feel like so far I might be in the niche of ADHD or creativity or just showing up online. Like I don't even know, still very early, but yeah, any key takeaways you want to leave for anyone? And also I'll ask you to just list where people can find you, whether it's your website or just socials, let people know where to go.
Sure. So I'm on TikTok as ADHD Survival Kit. The point of being organized isn't to be an organized person, it's to get to live the life that you want. So I guess I would advise people to make their own maintenance poster. So it's basically like come up with things that you know help you manage your energy. And the mental model that I did was split it into physical and digital, environment, body and mind, and environment, body and mind. So things in your physical environment, what are all the things that like throw you off, or that when you do, they help you with your energy? And you go through I talk about this in the survival kit. It might be too much information in one go.
Cool. Incentivizes people to grab it and check it
Yeah,
out. I'm definitely going to check it out because I need some more ADHD systems, more support to improve my organizational skills and just get things done. And yeah, dude, that's awesome advice. Thanks for coming on, Josh. Until next time, everybody. Thanks for watching and peace.